another episode of Small Talk. You already know, two queens, two perspectives, one topic. Asia, what we getting into?
So today we are going to deep dive into something a little more therapeutic today. So we are going to talk about how to navigate through depression and anxiety. Let's get started.
All right, let's see. So let's start off maybe like defining what anxiety and depression is. Not the Webster Dictionary version, but our version. Yeah. So for me, anxiety is exactly what I feel every single day when I have to do a presentation at work. The rapid heart rate, the feelings of anxiousness, the sleepless nights. Let me see. Caffeine is terrible because that actually filters into anxiety. It feeds your anxiety. Yeah. To me, when I define anxiety, it's just simply that. It's the feelings surrounding, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say eager, like you're eager to do something, but anxious. Yeah. Anxious is the word when we're talking about anxiety. When we talk about depression, it's just feelings of, I'll let you go ahead. I'll let you do that one. Depression.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to depression and just having depressive symptoms, a lot of time it stems from this idea of feeling hopeless. Yeah. So whether that's feeling isolated, right, not feeling connected to other people, whether that's just feeling a sense of like almost like an emptiness, but in the way that it starts to impact your day-to-day, right? It starts to impact your functioning. So something, it might impact the way that you eat, right? It might impact the way that you sleep, whether that's falling asleep or staying asleep, whether that's eating too little or eating too much. It might have to do with your relationships and the way that you connect with people. So you might start to feel isolated, right? And start to almost like hibernate a little bit, right? Like sort of having more time to self. You'll see it a lot with folks that have low motivation. That's one of the symptoms of depression, but most times depression stems from this feeling of hopelessness in some area. So for some people, they might go through depression after a breakup, right? Or after there's a transition or a change that they felt like they didn't have any control over, or even if they did, right? It's beyond sadness, but it's something that like I said before, it starts to impair some part of your functioning.
Yeah, that's good. That's perfect. That's exactly what it is. And I feel like when we tie in anxiety and depression, it's oftentimes people like to define those things as the same thing. They're definitely not. Two totally separate, actually mental health disorders. When you're feeling anxious, for instance, let's talk about anxiety and depression when we go through a breakup. Let's use that as an example. Anxiety could simply be you're used to this person texting you every single morning, good morning, beautiful, whatever it is. Now, the breakup, you don't get that text message anymore. So you're anxious, you feel it in your body. You start, whatever symptom comes with your anxiety, you feel that when you're anticipating this text message, or you're anticipating, is his name or her name going to pop up on my screen? That's feeling that anxiety component when we talk about a breakup. When we talk about depression, it's more so
yeah. So when we talk about depression, it's more so like I think of like the depression deep is something that's like deeply rooted, right? So in the sense of like a breakup, a depression might be no one's ever going to love me, and because of that feeling, right, now it's like, well, I'm just going to isolate myself. So then you just become more isolated. It might be a memory that, you might have a memory, or you might not be able to listen to a certain song, right? To a certain music. You might not be able to go to different restaurants because that thing might be a reminder. And those reminders makes you sad, right? But beyond just being like sad, because we all feel sad, but it's beyond like, man, now I don't want to go out at all, right? Now I don't want to eat at all. It goes, like I said, it's that step beyond. So I think the difference is when we think about anxiety, right? So the anxiety piece is no one will ever love me again, right? But then the depressive thing is now, because of that thought, that anxious thought, now my response is to isolate myself. And I think that's kind of like the biggest difference when I think about depression and anxiety. Sometimes depression is like that feeling, right, that comes after that anxious thought. So a lot of times anxiety is also rooted in a fear. Anxiety, you have a fear. It's a
Mm-hmm.
fear that most times there's not necessarily a lot of evidence for per se. Like for instance, we can't ever be sure that person might not ever experience love again,
Yeah.
or might not be loved by an individual or anything like that. But the anxiety, and what causes anxiety is the fear, right? Is the fear of not being able to be loved again. Because that fear is now existing, now we're moving into depression, where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm in the second place, and I'm gonna stay here. Yeah.
I think it's safe to say, so just to backtrack a little bit, I think it's safe to say anxiety is more of a feeling, an emotion here and now. That emotion that you're feeling, basically that sort of stems from stress. It's often stress related.
For sure.
And then when you jump into depression, it's that feeling, like she said, that's afterwards, like that response to the anxious thought that you might have had. So when we talk about anxiety, there's social anxiety.
Yeah.
There's, for those that don't know, social anxiety, you just don't like being in the atmosphere amongst other individuals. You get very anxious about being in the midst of others interacting. It doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I'm an introvert, stay home, but it does mean that you just get this emotion, this feeling, heavy breathing, like I said, increased heart rate, sweaty palms, nausea, dizziness. All those things are symptoms of having anxiety when you're about to experience a social gathering or a social setting of some sort that you're not comfortable with. There's separation anxiety. Kids often experience this. Not only kids, I think adults experience separation anxiety too. It's often seen in children. When a parent leaves the room, the child's like, oh my God, what's happening? Where did the parent go? They get anxious, there goes that emotion, then comes crying, then comes screaming, whatever emotion is attached to that feeling that they're having at that time. And then the separation anxiety of a long distance relationship. We got to go our separate ways. You live here, I live here. And it's like, all this time, we've been one, we've been rocking together, we've been doing everything together, but now we have to live separately. And it's like, I'm anxious because what are you doing? What's happening? Am I going to do it? Is this going to work? What about school? What about real life? What about work? Like, all those things kind of tie into that emotion, which later those are just two examples of types of anxiety that exist within the mental health disorder. But the reason why I think so many people confuse the two is because anxiety and depression go hand in hand. They're literally like cause and effect.
Oh yeah.
That's
yes.
And the effect doesn't necessarily, not everybody experiences depression. Some people are anxious. For instance, I'm about to jump on a flight. I hate flying. I'm claustrophobic. It's a little tube. That does not make me then depressed when I get on the plane. I'm just anxious about getting on the plane, being on the plane. When I land, I'm fine.
Yeah.
It goes right away. That's what anxiety is. But they do go hand in hand, because some of those emotions and feelings can then, stem over into that response of feeling sadness and depressed. It's a prolonged like feeling. Like,
yeah. I would definitely agree with that. I think when it comes down to depression as well, there are some things like that I do want to say that for some people there might not be an official like somebody left me or something bad had to happen. Sometimes it is a chemical imbalance that we have, and we see that a lot with seasonal affective disorder, and that is under depression, but that actually has to do with like sunlight. Honestly, and it's the way that our bodies then respond to light in a way. There's a lot of nuances to that and all the things, but when it comes down to it, it's like when we do like the time change and stuff like that, and they say places like Alaska, a lot of people, because there is a season there, right, where there is a lot of darkness, and the way that it deals with our emotions and our feelings and all that stuff internally, and the chemicals and all that fun stuff, and what can and cannot be released, then a lot of people in Alaska, they actually suffer more with SAD, right? Whereas like in a place like Miami, they actually say a lot of people that do suffer from seasonal affective disorder come on down to Miami because there's so much sun, and things like that. It actually helps to rebalance some of these chemicals and things like that. So some of them are genetics, right? And just the way that our bodies respond and chemicals and all that stuff. But when it comes down to other types of depression, right? Sometimes, a lot of times that I've seen, a lot of people have functional depression, which is, we all say functional depression, and it's not like you can't be diagnosed with
Right.
functional depression, right? It's persistent depressive disorder, and it's basically like where you start to feel what I was explaining to Britt and like talking to her about, like even my experience with that, right, has been like, it's like you're good, but it's like this undertone of, but I'm really not okay, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's this, every day I'm okay, but I'm not 100%,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a lower level of depression, but that lasts long term.
Mm-hmm.
So those are just like two examples of, like, sometimes it doesn't have to be like I am stuck in my room all day, every day, right? Trying to be isolated. Depression looks differently for different people.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't always come with the anxious thoughts either, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they can coexist, and sometimes they don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so just thinking about that it does impact a lot of people across different cultures, across different ethnic backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
across all the genders, different things like that. But there are things that you can do
Mm-hmm.
to navigate through both times of whether it's just anxiety or depression or experiencing them both.
Yeah, yeah. Snaps. She said it all. I think it's very important to know how to identify some of those triggers. I think that's the base, that's the root of everything, in terms of you trying to get to the bottom of what you're experiencing. Honestly, you have to know what triggers you. Once you establish that foundation and gain clarity on what, what's actually triggering you, you can start your healing journey, because in gaining clarity comes the healing. After healing comes your purpose, finding your purpose in life. And in order to get there, I just feel like you have to find once you find your triggers, you have to find coping mechanisms that attach to those triggers to stop anxiety and depression and everything that goes through that. So, Asia, if I can ask you, what are some coping skills, mechanisms that you feel like you've told your clients or you probably use on your own to navigate through anxiety and depression?
Sure. I would say, like, when it comes down to anxiety in particular, because a lot of the, like Britt was saying earlier, like a lot of the symptoms and the way that anxiety manifests itself is in a physical something, right? So that might be, for some people, it might be headaches. It might be hands getting sweaty, palms getting sweaty. It might be actually stomach aches. A lot of people don't recognize that can be a part of anxiety too. Having stomach aches, having your back hurting, and all those different things, right? Your heart beating really fast. So a way to then be able to relieve some of those things, if it's a physical thing, you want to do something physical but in a healthy way.
Right.
So that might be just going for a short walk. That could be literally even just doing something with your hands. So I've seen where some people, they might like color. Other times, like I have some clients that they pick. So they might pick at their nails or even at their lips. So what I've actually told some of my clients to do, I say, get you some Vaseline or some chapstick. So anytime you want to, or some lotion, a small thing of lotion. So anytime you actually want to pick your lips, I said at least moisturize your lips.
Yeah.
So then just put on chapstick, right? So it's being able to do something physical that is healthy to replace the physical things that's already going on in your body, right? It's a way to kind of release that energy. So that's the thing to do for anxiety. So with anxiety, a lot of times you want to do something that is physical. So some people work out, right? They work out a lot. For other people, they might color, like I said. Dancing is a big one, actually, that actually is for both depression and anxiety. Listening to music. So when it comes down to feeling hopeless and having low motivation, low energy, right? With depression, if you have a happy playlist, I'm telling my clients to get a happy playlist, right? So you don't want to do this when you're already feeling down, but just like wherever you are at any time, just start a happy playlist. Mine is called Groovin'. So it's something that I like. It's some of my favorite songs and all that stuff. Yeah. So what happens is if you put on that playlist, right? Because it doesn't take much to just hit play on the phone. Because sometimes you might not want to get out of bed. You might have low motivation. You might not want to really do much of anything.
Mm-hmm.
But literally just listening to certain things, it starts to help to soothe you, right? It starts to help to refocus you to something that might be a little bit better, right? So with that, you start singing the song out loud. So you want to sing the lyrics out, because when you sing them, you're saying them, you're moving, you're doing something physical, and then start to dance with it too. So you're getting your body moving, all those different things. So that can actually work for both depression and anxiety. And when it comes depression, and then with depression, when it comes down to depression, a lot of it is with low motivation, right? So sometimes you might not feel like you can reach out to somebody. You might feel isolated, different things like that. And a lot of times, like I said, you don't have the motivation to eat. Your sleep is impacted. So take small steps, right? So I say, this is one thing that I say a lot. Sometimes if it's hard to get out the bed and it's hard to brush your teeth, it's hard to shower, your body naturally, you're going to have to go to the bathroom. So when that happens, you're already in the bathroom, right?
Yeah.
So jump in the shower. You're already right there. You're going to have to wash your hands. So go to the sink. You're at the sink. Your toothbrush is there. So just take whatever you think the next step is, take a step even smaller than that. Because sometimes they'll be, oh yeah, well, when I get depressed, I'm gonna reach out to my homegirl. And then you get depressed and you're like, I don't want to talk to anybody, right? So then even if you're like, man, I don't even want to go out with my friends, right? Then just start thinking about, oh, what's this outfit that I like, right? Go on a website and just start looking at outfits, because they're like, oh my gosh, I have that skirt or I have that thing. And then just try it on. You don't have to go anywhere, but just to get yourself out of the bed, right? When you start to put on something that feels good for you, you start to move a little bit different, right? So when it comes down to depression in particular, break it on down. Just small steps. Like get yourself just moving a little bit, just taking one step further than you did the day before. And I think those are some things that I can think of just off the top of my head that can work for both depression and anxiety, and sometimes even both together.
That's good. Tidbit before you go, for all my journalers out there, that's another great way. Sometimes when we write things down and we actually see it in front of us, we come to another realization within ourselves. Write things down. Cry, scream, yell, sing, dance, like you said. Shop, but don't overspend. Shop, but don't overspend. Do what you have to do for you, whatever makes you feel happy, but always remember first to kind of tackle those triggers. What's triggering you? Make sure you identify that. Kind of monitor your mood. What makes you feel a certain way? It might not necessarily be a trigger to you at the time, or you might not view it as a trigger, but just jot it down somewhere. Like, hold on, wait a minute. That kind of made me feel sad. That kind of made me feel angry. What did I do? What can I do differently next time to not make me feel this emotion? That's how we navigate through anxiety, depression, and all these other moods and emotions that we may be feeling at the time. With that being said, this has been another episode of Small Talk. You already know, two queens, two perspectives. Until the next time, that one topic, we will see y'all later. Bye.
Bye.
Almost forgot that.